On September 11, 2025, history echoed through the hills of the occupied West Bank. Standing before a jubilant crowd in Maale Adumim, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a message that reverberated far beyond this settlement, his categorical vow that there will never be a Palestinian state. His words were sharp, deliberate, and greeted with applause as he declared, "We said that a Palestinian state would not be established, and indeed a Palestinian state will not be established. This place belongs to us." The applause that followed was not only for the declaration itself, but for what it symbolized, a direct rejection of decades of international negotiations, UN resolutions, and peace initiatives that sought a two-state solution. Netanyahu's statement was made during a signing ceremony for a major expansion project in Maale Adumim, one of the largest Israeli settlements deep inside the West Bank. Settlements like these, considered illegal under international law, have long been at the core of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For Palestinians, Maale Adumim is more than just a settlement. It is a symbol of land loss, encirclement, and the daily realities of occupation. For many Israelis, however, it is viewed as a strategic and biblical claim, part of what they call Judea and Samaria, the ancient heartland of the Jewish people. Netanyahu's vow comes as tensions surge across the region. Clashes between Israeli settlers and Palestinian villagers have intensified in recent months. International mediators warn that the expansion of settlements threatens to permanently block the creation of a viable Palestinian state. Netanyahu's remarks recall a familiar pattern. Successive Israeli leaders have at times spoken of peace, negotiations, and compromise, but in practice, settlement expansion has continued relentlessly. Since the Oslo Accords of the 1990s, the number of settlers has more than tripled, now surpassing 700,000 across the West Bank and East Jerusalem. For the international community, particularly the United States and European Union, the two-state solution has long been seen as the only path to peace. Yet on this September day, Netanyahu effectively declared that vision dead. The timing was symbolic. 24 years after the outbreak of the Second Intifada in 2001, the landscape of the West Bank has shifted dramatically. Walls, checkpoints, and settlements have reshaped the territory, carving Palestinian enclaves into fragmented patches. In many ways, Netanyahu's words are less a shock than a confirmation of what many on the ground already know. The two-state solution has been eroding for years, if not decades. The reaction to Netanyahu's vow is already sending ripples across global capitals. Palestinian officials denounced the statement as a formal declaration of permanent occupation. The Palestinian Authority warned that this path would lead to endless conflict. Hamas, emboldened by the collapse of peace prospects, has used such rhetoric to justify further resistance, and regional players are bracing for escalation. In Washington, the White House faces yet another diplomatic dilemma. The US remains Israel's closest ally, providing billions in military aid annually. But open rejection of Palestinian statehood could complicate America's regional strategy, particularly as it tries to calm tensions in Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran. Meanwhile, European governments are expected to condemn the statement, reaffirming their support for Palestinian sovereignty, yet words alone may have little impact. Netanyahu, emboldened by his domestic base and coalition partners, appears determined to cement facts on the ground rather than negotiate. For Palestinians living under occupation, Netanyahu's vow is not just rhetoric, it shapes their daily existence. Each new settlement project brings more checkpoints, land confiscations, and restricted movement. The promise that a Palestinian state will not be established translates into a future of uncertainty for millions of people. In Maale Adumim itself, the mood was the opposite. Supporters cheered the Prime Minister, waving flags and chanting slogans. For them, his declaration was a reaffirmation of national identity, security, and divine promise. This dual reality, celebration on one side, despair on the other, captures the enduring tragedy of the conflict. Beyond the immediate moment, Netanyahu's declaration forces a fundamental question on the international community. If not two states, then what? Critics argue that Israel risks entrenching a system of permanent inequality where millions of Palestinians live without full rights or sovereignty. Supporters of Netanyahu counter that a Palestinian state would pose an existential threat to Israel's security and that the only path forward is continued Israeli control. The ceremony in Maale Adumim also underscored Netanyahu's domestic political calculus. His coalition government relies heavily on far-right and religious nationalist parties that oppose Palestinian statehood outright. By making this vow publicly, Netanyahu not only reassured his allies but also rallied his base at a time of political uncertainty. His message was clear: the land is not negotiable, and neither is Israel's security. International law, however, tells a different story. The United Nations has repeatedly declared that settlements in the occupied territories are illegal, a violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Yet enforcement has been virtually non-existent. Decades of resolutions have not stopped the construction cranes, bulldozers and cement mixers that continue to reshape the West Bank's landscape. Netanyahu's vow now challenges the very credibility of international diplomacy, reducing once solemn resolutions to symbolic gestures. The broader geopolitical stakes cannot be ignored. In the Arab world, Netanyahu's words have reignited anger, particularly at a time when normalization deals with Gulf states were slowly shifting the diplomatic map. Leaders in Jordan and Egypt, countries with peace treaties with Israel, are now under renewed pressure from their populations to respond. In Tehran, Iranian leaders have seized on the statement as proof of Israeli intransigence, strengthening their narrative of resistance. For ordinary Israelis, the vow reflects both pride and anxiety. Pride in their government's firm stance on security and sovereignty, anxiety over the prospect of further violence, diplomatic isolation, and the erosion of alliances. For ordinary Palestinians, it feels like the door to statehood has been slammed shut. Families already struggling under checkpoints, movement restrictions, and economic hardship now face the prospect of a future without sovereignty. The sense of despair is palpable, but so too is the determination to resist. As the ceremony ended and cameras shut off, Netanyahu's words lingered. This place belongs to us. For Palestinians, those words symbolize dispossession. For Israelis, they symbolize permanence. What is clear is that the Prime Minister's vow marks a turning point. With this declaration, the already dim prospects for a two-state solution grow even darker. The international community now faces a pressing question. Will it continue to push for a peace process that Israel's leader has publicly buried, or will the world adapt to a new reality of permanent conflict and occupation? The future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict may well hinge on how this moment is remembered. Was it the day the two-state solution finally died? Or was it the day the world decided to confront reality and search for a new path forward? What Netanyahu has declared as a triumph in Maale Adumim could, in time, be remembered as the speech that defined the next chapter of this enduring struggle.